my name is Edsel Eusebius. My stage name is Touché. So there are a lot of individuals who might not know me by Edsel Eusebius who only know me by my stage name, Touché, because I've been using that for quite a bit of years. And as was said, I was born and raised in a very musical family. My grandfather was Mr. Nathaniel Davis, Tanny from Tanny and the Boys. And I grew up in a household that was always striving with music. My grandfather was he would encourage me to play the guitar. He used to buy me little instruments that I could practice on. And he would take time to teach me certain things. And many of the bands in the family, so also my uncles, their orchestra, they had a steel orchestra, the Risden Steel Orchestra. They used to practice also in the yard where I grew up. So I was exposed to a lot of music from a very young age, and everyone would include me in that. So I feel very privileged to have had that, because a lot of children don't have the opportunity to be exposed to that kind of musical upbringing, or even sometimes instruments on a whole. And that's a very big disservice in my opinion. So I started out playing steel pan. That was the first instrument that I played, along with a little banjo that my grandfather gave me. I used to take it to school every day with me, as I would play for assemblies and different things like that. But I would accompany my uncles in the hotels and got a knack for performing from a very young age. As I grew older, I don't know if everybody remembers Heart Attack. Most people might. Heart Attack was a very popular band, and when they came out, I was a young kid growing up, and I was very, very much influenced by them, because one of the members from Heart Attack is my uncle, the one to the far your right, and he was the bass player from that band. So that was one of the reasons why I was like, oh my goodness, I want to play bass guitar also. So I have another friend, a cousin actually. He goes by Dr. Jones. His name is Pedro Jones, and when we were young, we started our own little band trying to imitate what these guys were doing. I can remember keenly that, we were practicing and we were so excited, but we didn't really have much people helping us to own our craft and help us to move forward. So we would be up and down trying to find grown folk to help us learn some more, but it was quite a challenge back then. I remember one story from my uncle's self. I asked him, hey, I want to learn some more about the bass guitar. I can play a little bit, but can you show me something? So he said, sure, man, come with me. So he took me to a room. He put a radio on the table, gave me the bass guitar. He told me, all right, whenever you hear a song come on, try to play it. And he left. And I was like, oh, okay. So for me, that was my formal training in music. But where there's a will, there's a way. And if you really want something, you'll still find a way to achieve. And so we've seen that for many years now. Our young people have been doing music for many years without very much all the resources that they could have to even help them get to a higher platform. So, as I said, from a very young age, I've been playing. I played in a lot of different groups. Also, when I left the island, I went to the Netherlands, and I was a performer in many different bands. As you can see, I played on a lot of big international stages, well, primarily throughout Europe, and some places also in South America, and once in Toronto we performed also. I used to play with this band here. It's a band called Entwine. Does anyone know that group? Entwine, we had some we had quite a bit of success in the Netherlands. We had a few top 10 hits, which gave us the ability to do some massive touring in the Netherlands primarily, because this group was really known in the Netherlands. So I think we saw every pop podia that Holland has to offer. We probably played a few times in some of the bigger festivals in the Netherlands also. I had a few pictures to show some of those. And after I left that group, in I think 2008, late 2008, I started to play with an artist from Statia named Ziggy Ricardo. I don't know if anyone knows him. Ziggy Ricardo is a well-known artist in the Netherlands also, but also throughout Europe. He's a reggae artist, but I don't know if many people know the record company that he was under at the time. The owner of that record company is a local gentleman from Sint Maarten also. Most people know him. His name is, well, he goes by the name Mr. Rude. It's Mr. Berto Fleming. He was the owner and manager of Ziggy Ricardo, well, owner of the label and the manager of Ziggy Ricardo back in the days. And he contacted me about playing with Mr. Ricardo. And that's how actually our friendship began, because I played many years with him also. But the difference with Ziggy Ricardo, he had a lot of success outside of Holland, because reggae is such a global genre. There's a lot of vraag for reggae music, requests for reggae music all over Europe. So we played from everywhere, from Switzerland to Poland to you name it. We were there in a 2-year span. After that adventure, I formed my own band. I call it Chupacabra. After playing all this music, I really felt like getting back to my roots, where it all began for me. I really wanted to get back into soca music. And a lot of the guys that I was working with here are some of the guys from the Ziggy Ricardo band. There's some Suriname guys, and the drummer is a guy also from Sint Maarten. So they were very first in that style of music also. And we were busy with an album at the time, but everyone was still touring with other groups, so it was a little challenging. We did a few performances with that group, but not many. We have enough songs to almost make an album, but we never got that far, unfortunately. So over the years, I put up a quick collage of some of the different albums I've worked on with the different groups. A lot of you know Orange Grove also, I think. I was one of the founding members of Orange Grove also back in the days. I produced their first album, Genuine Origins. I recorded it, mixed it, didn't master it. And I also did my second album that I worked on was for this guy here, Patrick Graham. I think a lot of people might know him. If you don't know him, you probably know his hit song. He had a really big song. Everybody knows this song. I don't know if everybody can hear it. Yeah, Fire was a really big song. I remember I was down here on a tour with Orange Grove at the time. And when we were busy with this album, and they were doing interviews by different radio stations, and I was there after every interview. I would walk up and I would plug it. Hey, listen to this song. It's from local guys. You know, we're doing trying to thing. And when I went back up, we were busy still with the album, and a few months after, we started getting calls from people saying, hey, yo, people like that song. You know, we were like, oh, okay, cool, you know. You know, your friends, them always going to try to hype you up. So we thought we were overdriving, exaggerating at first, you know. But when we came down for a vacation, I think in December, and everywhere we went, we heard the song, and we were walking on the road, Steel Pan would be playing the song. We were like, wow, you know, the song really took on a life of its own. And even it got like a loop effect. We released it up down here, but it got so big, it looped back into the Netherlands, and was, I think, the song that was the longest running #1 song in the Latin charts on Phonics for that year. So that was a really big achievement back in those days.
What I know for sure is that the arts and culture is that vehicle which allows us to fulfill our full human potential. And it is with that certainty of knowing on a deep cellular level of the richness and density and the grandeur of the creative expressive art experience that I engage with you today. So, from time immemorial, the story of us has always been expressed through this receptacle called body, the mind, and the spirit. Who we are has been expressed through the bodies of the griots, the bodies and voices of the griot, through the eloquence of the poet, to the grace of the dancer, the eyes of the photographer and the filmmaker and the videographer, through the ears of the musician and the sound technicians, through the imagination and nimble fingers of the painters, through the rough-hewn, calloused fingers of the sculptor, through the rapid spitfire words of the rapper, through the imagery and the liquid flow of the dub poet, through the tongue-and-cheek double entendre of the sleek troubadour calypsonian, through the hip swinging, booty bouncing, kickback, cock up, and raw sensuality of the dance hall rhythm. Yes? You there with me still? Good. Through the reverence of the gospel vocalist. It appears, however, that it takes a cataclysmic, life-altering Category Hurricane 5 to make us stop, reflect, and revisit humanity's birthright to be expressive and to acknowledge our inherent creative nature. Thus, it is that connection to our organic true self that enables us to reconnect with the lost traditions that have sustained us, but have also opened up us to hearing and receiving new information that innovates us, to living the best possible life that we are all gifted with. So, just like Howard Gardner managed to shift our attention about what is intelligent by introducing us to the concept of multiple intelligences, so too does this SDG give me the possibility as a cultural person to dwell in multiple platforms, because as you all know, culture is life, and we can hop in it. But I'm going to focus on number 11 and with the idea of the target number 4. I really love number 8 because of the entrepreneurial aspect of it, but I'm going to stick to the traditions right now. So, number 11 says, make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. The fact is, I love the word resilient. It's being beaten about a lot lately and said so often that we cannot lost the impact of what it means to be resilient. But here goes, people. Resilience was not invented in 2017. Sint Maarteners have always been that person. Okay, we are strong. So I'm not even going to say the word resilience anymore. So just like Howard Gardner made us think about, okay, how can we look at intelligence? I'm just going to run through them real quick and see if we can connect them to the idea of creativity and culture. My quick version. So we know one of the intelligences is the musical, rhythmic, and harmonic. So musical intelligence. And how does that connect? As Savior's just told you. That's a level of intelligence, the musical person who can hear rhythms and hear patterns. There's this man in South Africa that wrote this song, "My father was a symbol of the future. He used to take me by the hand, make me listen to his music. The rivers and the oceans were singing," and he just, from the rhythm of the nature, he just compiled this whole symphony of music, listening to that, the nature. Visual, spatial, architectural visionary, verbal linguistic, the poet, the author, the written word, logical mathematics, the gamer, right? Who's the gamer amongst you? I'm not. So not. I think I'm still playing, what do you call that thing with the pinball machines? I'm still stuck in that phase. Bodily kinesthetic, creative movement through space. Okay, we can say the dancer, but there's also that person that always knows in space where they're at, a very, very, very present sense of self in space. The interpersonal. Since we're dealing with intangible cultural heritage, I'm talking about motivational speakers. How do you connect that? Intrapersonal, the reflective person, can be a preacher, can be, someone along those lines. Naturalistic. Bush medicine, the doctor, the obeah woman, you name it, all these things, the herbalist, the existentialist. I have here philosopher/comedian. Someone who can come back at us drawing and make us laugh at our own selves, right? So I wanted to immediately connect these two things because I'm talking about ICH under number 11 and 12 and how we safeguard and we make them possible. So there is inherent intelligence in culture, and we tend to underestimate that. The intelligence of how we used to build. We overlook. Right now there's all this talk about new building codes. But I remember distinctly when Hurricane Louis happened, I looked around and all the old wooden houses were still standing. Even after many years of neglect, if you look through the bushes, you could still see some of them still. And the reason that they got destroyed wasn't so much because, okay, neglect, they've been sitting there for 20-something years, unchecked, rebuilt. But then it's because of other, negligent building practices that sent debris flying on all around our homes. The Vineyard building right up the road, she told me, Mrs. Carolyn Boncamper told me that she took out of her yard over 15 truckloads of debris that came slamming into her house, and still her home stood. She still had the original shingles under everything else, and she still managed to save. And she talked about the intelligence of how when you build a house, it needs to breathe during a hurricane. Which windows are open? How many of us still think about those traditional? We so right away jump to new information that we forget to tap into what our elders have taught us, how to feel that. Right now, I think Feng Shui is the biggest thing. And as a level of Icy Age, tapping into the traditions of the Chinese tradition to build properly so the house can breathe, and with the dragon passing through all these elements, because you know what's not going to happen, and that blah, blah. So you understand what I'm trying to say? So, as Caribbean people, we need to, again, revisit the idea of culture, really explore it under a new lens to what the full scope of it could really mean for us. So last year, the ministry, in collaboration with the Department of Education, we introduced this thing called CIF, Creative Industry Interactive Exchange Forum, where for the first time in a very long time, we gathered together over 150 creative people of Sint Maarten under one roof to take stock of where we are. What's our art doing? How does it work for us? Where are we going? And we're still in that phase. And it actually was an opportunity to introduce to Sint Maarten the concept of the orange economy. You all know the orange economy? Google it. It's great read, fun stuff. And the orange economy, has been identified as a new platform for allowing for economic growth in the creative industries. So, and the orange, by the way, have nothing to do with Oranje Boven. It has to do with, again, ICH, tapping into the history of self to bring forth something. If you've ever heard of the word Sankofa, Sankofa means to take from the past that which can help mankind in the future. So the orange comes from, in ancient Egypt, to adorn the tombs of the pharaohs is a dominant color for culture, creativity, and identity, hence the orange economy. So in his book titled The Creative Economy, How People Make Money from Ideas by John Hawkins, yes, he defines it includes all the sectors whose goods and services are based on intellectual property, advertising, architecture, craft, design, fashion, film, games and toys, music, publishing, research, development, software, TV, radio, video games, and visual and the performing arts. So that's where we got to live, people. We got to live in that world. How are we going to identify that to have better lives? Tap into what is there for the taking. So here goes. We need to recognize the intrinsic value and creative ideas and the process of creativity. We need to grow towards that idea that our talents and our rhythm of life is a means to improve our lived condition. So stop talking about the dancing thing, the music thing. When people call me, just a little small thing, I get that all the time, even now.
When your child come home tomorrow and say, Mommy, I want to go learn to play the steel pan, or I want to participate in the carnival troupe, do not see it as a negative. The child's creativity is coming out and is going to organize his thoughts for what he's going to produce in the future. The creative arts can never be measured by anything else. It puts it on another level when they come on the children's intelligence. So I do not consider myself an artist. For sure I'm not. My friend told me to keep my day job, so I'm going to stick to my day job. So I'm here this evening as one of those persons who I consider myself as the vehicle that could help move the creative arts forward. I've done it for the last 30 years through the various activities that we have been organizing here in St. Maarten through the Conscious Lyrics Foundation. And in 2003, we established the St. Maarten Book Fair, which have taken on a life of its own. I was proud this week, I was in St. Vincent. I was solicited to have a discussion with their Minister of Education there. and their festival have been getting some trouble. So can you imagine me from Little St. Martin was calling Big St. Vincent to help with their book fair? And then as I returned to St. Martin, I received a note from Montserrat saying, Shuja, we are going to put everything at your disposition to come and help us organize our literary festival in St. Vincent and Montserrat. And like that wasn't enough. It clashes with Grenada Literary Festival, who's sending a delegation to St. Martin, about 4 people at our literary festival come June on a fact-finding mission to see what we're doing so they could start their literary festival in November. Now, tell me if that's not positive work that we are doing in St. Martin. How can we can all this stuff that we are doing and make it possible that it could be, the buzzword is what? Sustainable? Well, good. We know what we are doing already. We know what we're supposed to be doing, but how can we make it sustainable? I'll share a couple of what I deem as importance, the important points, the institutes that I think could help. Claria didn't talk about her institute, the NIA, but that's one of the key institutes in the country. We have another institute that has been that has been around for the last 40 years in the St. Martin community that we don't talk a lot about, and that is the House of Nehesi Publishers. There's none to measure. When I talk about these 2 institutions, it reminds me of, and I'm not making in no sense any form of comparison, it reminds me of Casas de las Americas in Cuba that was established 4 months after the revolution and still lives today. And we know the impact Casas have had on the cultural development of Cuba. But then it also reminds me of the NDTC, the National Dance Institute of Jamaica, for which I heard Clara participated in her bio. That was founded also in 1962, the year of their independence. So we are moving forward. We have had 10-10-10. We are developing this country to become a nation. We have had the same thing in the North, where the Constitution has changed in 2007. But where is those institutions that is going to help develop the creative thinking of the child, for maintain that sustainable development that we definitely need? Clara mentioned earlier that Trinidad lost the copyrights of the steel pans to Japan. Now, listen, this is my take. I haven't researched it, but I had this discussion with some Trinidadians, and this was my conclusion from the discussion with them. But you see that little cultural thing that Clara just talked about? That's how we treat it. Do you guys know, before that, we lost the copyrights to Spider-Man to the big movie makers in the United States, which originated in Trinidad through a story called Anansi. So we have been losing these things because what we do is the little thing. And we think it is not important what we are doing. So these little things that we create become big things for other people. We have this new buzzword where when we're producing something, everybody's writing a book now, and it's good. I like when St. Martin people write books. And the new buzzword is to do self-publishing. So we go to this self-publishing thing, and we forget that we got a publishing house in St. Martin. And we have this myth about self-publishing, saying that self-publishing is cheaper. In truth and in fact, you get involved with a printing company online, and they tell you they are a publishing house. You submit your work, and in the publishing world, there is 0.something%, I said 0.something% tolerance of error within your book. That's a good book. But when you take back some of the books, and me and my friend, who is very critical, becoming a critical one of the book fair committee members, becoming a critical analyst of this type of work, had the opportunity to go through a book that was self-published on one of the islands recently. And the mistakes in the book are more than the 0 point something. Because what happened is you send your work to these printing companies that say they are publishers, and they are not. They're really just a printing company. But what you do, you compare the $2,000 or the $1,500 you're going to pay them to print your book with maybe Lasana Siku's and the House and the Hesse's prices, and you say, well, for the price I'm getting it done online, and for the price that Lasana is going to charge me, I prefer to do it online. But now, they give you all this thing and say, well, it's copywritten. And then in truth and in fact, when your idea is stolen, you realize that, wait a minute, I thought they said that, no, it's a printing company. They didn't tell you, they told you there was a publishing house, but it really was a printing company. And they create some bogus online promos. Now, you would probably say, well, Shuja, you work with the House and the Hesse publishers, so you're going to be talking for this publishing house. Yes, I do. And maybe I am biased on this one, but I'm also truthful on it. That if we are going to be sustainable, if we're going to make sure that the work that we are producing is top of the line, then you need to submit it to a publishing house, and you need to pass its first test. That the publisher takes it, reads it, and they have a committee discuss it, and then say, this is publishable. And it is not rejected. Now, House and the Hesse is very tough on that. They're very hard on their writers. As much as you guys know that Lasana is the project director of that company, his work was refused on 2 occasions when it was submitted to editors. They say, no, this can't pass. So the first review of your work needs to be done by the publishing company. When you print online, nobody do that for you. Now, everybody's story is important. When I talk about my family story with my mom and her migration to St. Maarten and the fact that she met her mother when she was a big woman already with her children and all that, people say, wow, what a beautiful story. When you bring down a book, yes, it's book worthy. But if you write it like crap and you submit it to a printing company in the United States, they'll gladly print it for you. But when you take it up, you read it you don't need to read the first chapter. You'd say, you just rest it back down, you wouldn't read it.